What's something intimate you were dying to try, but immediately wished you hadn't? Story 1. So, this is when we were 19. My girlfriend and I were spending some time together when things started to get handsy and intimate. We were in bed all bare, and she goes down, looks me in the eye, and asks to have a taste of my dingleberries. I thought, sure, why the hell not? And that was the worst mistake of my life. Surely, I thought it would be like any other previous experience where the girl would be gentle and all. But boy, was I wrong. With the force of an F5 tornado, she opened her mouth, took hold of the dingleberries, and took the craziest, strongest breath in. I have never before or since seen my berry sack manage to stretch that far. Now the pain from my berry sack being ripped from its home at March 11th was a pain I wouldn't wish on my worst foe. In half a second's time, I went from straight bliss to almost throwing up from a pain that I can't begin to describe. Now you'd think it would end there, but you have to remember, this poor girl just inhaled a whole berry sack, so she gags uncontrollably, and the worst thing happened. She bit down hard. This was about 13 years ago, and as I typed this out, I still cringed from the pain. To this day I get so weird and squeamish when anyone gets near the berry sack. I've had past girlfriends think it's bizarre that I make my berry sack off limits, but I cannot to this day get over it. It haunts me. Edit. To answer a few of the broad questions, yes, it was terrible as it sounded. No, I don't have any permanent damage, and life went on. I ended up dating that girl for 2 years, and no, she wasn't allowed near my sack for quite some time afterward. I finally did let her have a second go-around, and things went a lot smoother then, but I seriously to this day wig out if anyone tries to go at them. I have to give the be gentle with them lecture, which usually turns into me having to explain why. Usually ends up in a good laugh and business as usual. Before we continue, do us a quick favor. Smash that like button and subscribe to support our channel. Story 2. I was invited over by a woman who was a police officer. She was really attractive with huge jugs, and I was really excited to get things going with her. When she invited me over, I imagined doing all kinds of things with her and making her take the lead for the ride so I could watch and play with her huge soft jugs. So, I got there, and turns out she happened to be looking after one of the department's canines. Things got heated pretty quickly, and at one point while she was doing her thing just like I had imagined, I felt something warm and soft on my leg. For a split second, I thought it was her hand holding me for support, but nope, it was the dog. I opened my eyes and realized I was in fact now in a 3-score with her and the dog. And that warm, soft, wet sensation was her dog's dong. The dog was excitedly pounding on in my leg. She was completely in the moment, eyes closed, totally unaware. Meanwhile, I was trying to mentally recover from what felt like a horror movie. Needless to say, the mood was instantly dead. Went to be as soft as so fast. I can't even finish typing this. Totally traumatized. Story 3. It's definitely waking up to a blowy. That's the last time I'll fall asleep on a park bench with my mouth open. Story 4. Back in my university days, I used to sneak into my girlfriend's house and hang out in her room, which was on the 2nd floor of a 3-story house. Her parents were usually away traveling, and even when they were home, they stayed on the top floor and mostly kept to themselves. They weren't exactly fans of me, especially her dad, who owned a gun, so I was always on edge. But thanks to how big the house was and how separate the floors were, the chances of getting caught were pretty slim. One day I snuck over like usual, and we ended up having some pretty wild sex. Afterward, we were just lying there, relaxing. She got up to get dressed because she was planning to grab me something to eat from the kitchen. Meanwhile, I was still completely bare, not thinking much of it. Out of nowhere, her dad knocked on the door and announced that he had brought her food and wanted to bring it inside. I've never been shot in the head, but I can still feel the impact of my blood as it rocketed straight into the top of my skull, and I reckon the feeling may be similar. There was nowhere to hide. The room was rectangular. Once the door was opened, he'd see the bed on the left and the study table and clothes cabinet on the right. I was too big to crawl underneath the bed, so I rushed to the cabinet. It had drawers that went up to waist level, and then the rest of the space was for hanging longer clothes. It was too small. I could not fit in it, so I brought my right knee up to my chest and rested a quarter of my right, but cheek on the edge of the thing, while the tips of my left toes and fingers desperately clung to the open cabinet door that obscured the 90% of my body that was basically just out in the open. I was praying to all the gods that the door would be able to handle all that weight. and that my dingleberries weren't hanging low enough to be visible from underneath. Thankfully, it was a quick in-and-out situation, and her parents never found out. But I've learned to always put my clothes back on right after banging. Story 5. I was soloing off one time, and I had a picture of my brother's wife on my TV screen, fantasizing about her giving me a blowy. I was just about to be done when she knocked, and I quickly used the controller to tab to a game. Well, I didn't do it in time when I called her in. She just wanted to take a picture of the router I had in my room. I had a raging stiffy under the sheets, and I was praying she wasn't looking at the TV where her picture still was. Maybe she saw and acted like she didn't know. I don't know. I never soloed off to her again. It was just a spur-of-the-moment thing. Story 6. My wife and I were out for drinks at a bar, and we thought it'd be fun to sneak into the bathroom and get a little naughty. We chose the men's room without realizing it had just been mopped. As we started, the floor was so slippery I kept nearly falling behind her. On top of that, guys kept coming in and out, and we were way more drunk than most of them, so we thought we were being sneaky. Spoiler, we were not. When we left, everyone was laughing at the slippery guy in the bathroom who couldn't quite get the job done. Story 7. You know the number 69. Years ago, I had a friend with benefit situation with a former coworker. He had a job that kept him traveling constantly, and I worked hotel shifts with weird hours, so we'd link up whenever we could. One time, he was flying back from Spain and landed super early, around 4 a.m., just as I was waking up for work, so we figured it was the perfect time for a quick hookup. We decided to do it, and I've never regretted a decision faster. The second his dong got near my face, I was hit with the full force of 24-plus hours of travel. It was like a sweaty, stale, unholy combination of airplane seat, tight jeans, and zero airflow. Absolute plain pee-pee. To make it worse, his sweaty dinglings kept smacking my nose, releasing even more of that trapped funk every time. And of course, in that position, you're basically locked in. I couldn't even react or escape without causing a scene. Never. Again. Story 8. I regret doing it in the woods. The moment felt spontaneous and fun, until the mosquito bites kicked in. I swear every inch of exposed skin was a buffet. So not only did the mosquitoes get a whole show, but they also got a free meal out of it. 10 out of 10 would not recommend. Story 9. Those shots in the dong. Definitely not painful, and they do work, maybe a little too well. And just to clarify, I'm the female in the relationship, not the one getting the shot, but never again. My husband tried it once, and everything was great, until he got an uncomfortably prolonged stiffy. We ended up calling the emergency number, and they told us to start with a warm bath to help dilate the blood vessels, and to call back in an hour if it didn't improve. Right then, his young adult kid shows up unannounced in the middle of the afternoon. Normally, we'd all be watching the game together, so she immediately senses something's off. Meanwhile, the husband is stuck in the bathtub trying to get things to go down, and his kid ends up hanging out with me, thinking dad's back pain must be really bad since he's not out watching football with us. She wants to help, and honestly, thank goodness for the game. Otherwise, she might have ignored the protests and barged into the bathroom to check on him. She's great, but seriously, total TMI. We were expecting a quick recovery, which definitely didn't happen. Over 4 hours. It took 4 hours. It was a full-on, can't hide it, cornstar-level stiffy, and he said it was painful as hell. Meanwhile, we're doing our best to keep a straight face for the kid, lying through our teeth about why dad absolutely needs to be soaking in the tub, while simultaneously calling the emergency line for dong mishaps. Then calling again, taking the reversal shot, calling again, debating whether we'd have to abandon the cover story and head to the ER, and knowing full well that if we did, his ex would find out and absolutely blast it all over social media. So we kept up the act, pretending everything was perfectly fine while quietly panicking. After what felt like forever, it finally went down. He said it felt like the aftermath of getting nailed in his eggs, but otherwise, he was fine, and best of all, no one found out. 2 days later, he wanted to try the darn injection again. Absolutely nope. Story 10. What's something I'm never doing again? Have a banging session in a tent, while completely wasted and barely aware of my surroundings. My girlfriend and I were doing it one time. Alcohol made me last forever, if I could even get it up at all. And when I was finally done, I heard clapping. Turns out, it wasn't just me and her in the tent. There were 6 of her friends watching. Great for the ego, maybe, but now they all know my, let's just say, preferences. Absolutely mortifying. Story 11. Sneaking into my girlfriend's house with her dad not knowing. I'm 31 now, so this probably won't happen again, but when I was 20 and my girlfriend was 19, I used to climb a ladder into her window just to hang out and have fun. This was within the first few months of our relationship, and I hadn't met her dad yet, had only heard stories of him from her. Apparently, he was a big bad-A Navy SEAL back in his day, but at the time I'd sneak in, those days were far behind him, and he was an anesthesiologist. I didn't know anything about the profession except for what she told me, which was he'd often work 12 to 16 hours shifts. So, every time I went over, I never actually saw the guy. I'd stay the night, cook food with her in the kitchen, take showers, etc. It was basically my second home, and one I enjoyed a lot more than my primary, which was a studio apartment I shared with my dad sleeping in the living room on a couch. So needless to say, I spent most of my time at my girlfriend's nice comfy house. Over those few months, we both started to get a little too comfortable, and she would eventually start letting me stay for consecutive nights, sometimes even while he was there. And the next morning she'd go to class, and would let me hang out there till she got back if she knew it was going to be one of her dad's long shifts. Well, one day while she was out for a class, and I was waiting patiently for her to get back so we could conduct some business, I heard keys rattling and the door opened. I thought, hell yeah, time to get my dong some action. Only there would be no action at this particular moment. In fact, it would be the opposite. My berry sack literally retracted into my stomach as I turned around and saw her dad for the very first time. He was a large man, slightly over 6 foot but big, like American dad sized with a little more pudge all around. Probably weighed around 275 compared to my 5'11", 175 pounds frame. My heart instantly stopped beating as I lay in the living room watching TV, mostly bare like I owned the place, eyes staring at him like a deer in the headlights. The living room was directly to the right when you enter through the front door, and his room was straight ahead down a hallway. And somehow, by the grace of Christ, he didn't see me and just walked straight to his room. Although I was still alive at this point, my brain instantly started thinking about him being a Navy SEAL, offing people with his bare hands or one of those Rambo knives, and I knew I had to get the F out of there as soon as possible, or I'd likely end up another one of his victims, because banging a Navy SEAL's daughter in his house behind his back is not a good look. So as soon as I heard his bedroom door open, I made a swift dash to the door, opened it, and started running for my life. To make things worse, the house alarm went off and was blaring as I made my escape. Once I had sprinted to the end of the block and knew I was safe, I looked back while still running, and he was just standing there in the middle of the street like one of those horror movies everyone has seen. Didn't say anything, didn't even move. Just stood there staring menacingly like he wanted to rip my throat out. And had he caught me, I have no doubt he could have easily done so. My dad's apartment was about 3 miles away, and I kept jogging until I hit the main street and knew I was free from danger. Except remember when I said I was half bare? The only thing I had on was a pair of pink shorts. No shirt, no undies, no socks or even shoes. Just the shorts. The rest of what I wore there was in my girlfriend's room, and attempting a stealth mission to retrieve them before leaving would have certainly been a mission to off myself. So, I walked home half bare, and to top things off, it was raining. When I was about halfway there, I passed 2 homeless dudes and one of them gave me a shirt, so that was pretty cool. Once I finally made it back, I realized I didn't have my key and my dad was at work, so I ended up sitting on the stairs for 3 to 4 hours waiting for him to get back, which comparatively wasn't that bad since I was still breathing with my spinal cord intact. In the end, my girlfriend's dad ended up talking to her, and she gave him my dad's number. My dad brought it up as soon as he got back from work and drilled me about it for a while until I agreed to go confront her dad and apologize. So later that evening I went back, mustered up all the courage I could, and knocked on the door. He answered looking just as pissed as when I last saw him glaring at me while I was making a run for it. But after I explained everything, we shook hands, and I left on a positive note. I think. At least that's how I perceived it, but who knows how he felt. I definitely think he still harbored some negative, wanting to end emotions. So yeah, don't sneak into your girlfriend's dad's house, especially if he has off people. And if you do, don't wait there while she's gone all day no matter how tempting it may be. No nut is worth your life. Story 12. Working while using my fist. It felt like I was trying to help her deliver a baby cow. Felt like I was preparing to go spelunking in one of those horrifically small underwater caves. Felt like I was going to end up getting sucked inside, like some kind of portal. It felt like we were merging, and not in a romantic soul-merging way, but in a creepy one-body way. She loved it. I got the job done and got the hell out of there. Story 13. I was banging this married woman from work. She and her husband were swapsters, and I was assured that he didn't mind. He traveled for work and was constantly out of town. They were moving, and she wanted one more night together. I showed up at her empty house and started getting handsy her right there in the entryway. No furniture, so why not? But then she insisted we move to their bedroom where we had banged before. Fine. So we moved to the bedroom. I laid down facing the opposite way from the bed, but she insisted I turn around. I did, and we got going. I was really doing my thing, hitting all the right spots, when I thought I saw a shadow flicker in the bathroom. I didn't really care at first, but then out of the corner of my eye, I saw someone, definitely someone. I jumped up and bolted downstairs, grabbing my clothes as I went. She chased after me, trying to calm me down and insisting no one was there, but I knew what I saw. She told me to sit on the stairs and relax. Then she went upstairs, and moments later, her husband came down. He was soloing off in the bathroom while I was pounding his wife. He reassured me it was all good. He'd known the whole time. After about 10 minutes of talking, he looked at me and said, "You didn't get to end it properly, did you?" I replied, "No, I didn't." Then he turned to her and said, "Come on, babe, finish him up." I told him, "Man, I'm not going to get up right now." He said, "Give me 5 minutes and I'll leave." He shook my hand, went upstairs, got dressed, kissed his wife goodbye, and walked out. After a few minutes of talking, she got me going again, and we picked up where we left off. I wouldn't have minded him watching, but it sure would have been nice to be in on it. Story 14. A few years back, I was on a weekend trip to Madrid with some friends. One night we met a couple of girls, hit it off, had some drinks, and had a great time. The next night, we ran into them again, and by the end of the night, one of them pulled me aside and said she wanted me to take her back to her hotel, because she wanted me to take her V-card. So off we go. We get into her room, it's super dark, and we fall straight onto the bed in the middle of the room. She's really eager and starts trying to get things going, but honestly, it was uncomfortable and kind of painful. She clearly didn't have much experience, and I wasn't exactly a bedroom expert either. So I gently asked her to slow down and told her we could figure it out together. Then out of nowhere, this light appears at the foot of the bed. Her brother, who was apparently sleeping on the sofa at the end of the room, turned on his phone flashlight to see what all the noise was. I nearly died of shock. She never mentioned she was sharing a room, let alone with her brother. Needless to say, things came to a screeching halt. We all just awkwardly went to sleep, and the next morning's small talk was some of the most uncomfortable I've ever experienced. Story 15. I was in a relationship for 4 years with a guy who was into swinging. He tried many times to get me to agree to give it a try, and I eventually did. I knew he would probably do it with or without me, and if I agreed I might have at least some control over how it went down. We'd meet up with another couple at a bar or restaurant, fake some lame conversation, until someone would eventually break the tension with, "So, do you want to head back to our place?" Once we got there, things would turn awkward fast. It usually started with the girls dancing together or kissing, something to get things going. I think we ended up meeting up with 4 or 5 couples in total, and honestly, each time it ended up being so lame. One of the times, neither of us was really attracted to the other couple, so nothing really happened. Another time I got really drunk and ended up passed out in the couple's bathroom and was quickly retrieved and taken home because apparently the guy wanted my boyfriend to give him a blowy, and that was a hard pass. Then there was a time where my boyfriend and the other woman were into each other, and I really didn't care because I was becoming numb to this whole song and dance at this point. They started making out and stuff, and the husband just wanted to watch and direct them. Now turn her like that, now hold on her jugs. It was so distracting that my boyfriend lost his excitement and his stiffy. I was in the other room helping myself to some really fancy cognac they had in their bar, and we left. Finally, I had made up my mind that this is so dumb and that it was much hotter to think about and fantasize about than actually do. So, I decided that I would agree to it one more time, and that was it. Everything started out the same, lame conversation, eventually moving the party up to their hotel room. Surprisingly, I was actually really attracted to the other guy. I couldn't put my finger on it, but while we were sitting around having drinks and talking, I just kept wishing my boyfriend and his wife would disappear because I really wanted to spend some private time with him. So, we go back to their hotel room, and I eagerly climbed that man like a tree and was thoroughly enjoying myself. Had no idea what my boyfriend was up to and didn't care. And all of a sudden my boyfriend comes up behind me and whispers our safe word in my ear. We had agreed that if either of us said it, we would stop everything and leave immediately. I was disappointed, but Sarah. We talked about it later, and he said he didn't expect to be so jealous seeing me with someone else because he'd done this with other girlfriends and was never bothered by it. Anyway, we broke up about 6 months later, and I knew I would never do that again. In fact, I really hated myself for agreeing to something I really didn't want to do just to please a man. Okay, it gets good here. 5 years go by, and I got a friend request on Facebook from a guy that looked awfully familiar, but I thought maybe I was just imagining it. So he DM'd me and said, "Do you remember me?" And oh my God, it was that guy from that night. We started chatting, and I told him that me and that other guy broke up soon after that night, and I no longer even lived in the same city. Him and his wife lived in a different state from where we met. They were there on vacation. He then told me that him and his wife had gotten divorced soon after that as well, because she had wanted an open marriage, but they settled on swapping because he couldn't agree to an open marriage. Eventually, he just felt like the whole experience had taken everything he held sacred about marriage and irreparably ruined it. I asked how he found me on social, and he said he felt such a connection with me that night and always wondered what I was doing. He said he would search for me once or twice a year just to see if he could find me. So, we chatted a lot, eventually started talking on the phone, then started a long-distance relationship with him, coming to visit me whenever his kids were with their mother for her weekends. Well, to make a long story short, we have now been married for 14 years. We're madly in love even now, and we will never, ever bring anyone else into our marriage. Story 16. Doing the banging marathon. About 3 years ago, my current girlfriend and I had just moved in together. We were fresh out of long, dead-end relationships, each over a decade-long and totally dead bedroom. For the first time, we were really living alone, no roommates, no family, just us. So naturally, we went a little wild. We'd get drunk and bang nonstop. One Sunday, it kicked off early, woke up, went at it, and just kept going. Over and over, all day long until about 6 p.m. Then we both completely crashed and slept a solid 12 hours before work the next day. Of all the drugs I've done, all the brutal hangovers I've suffered through, and all the dumb choices I've had to live with, nothing ever hit me as hard emotionally as that Monday. My endorphins were absolutely wrecked. I was anxious, on edge, deeply depressed, and just completely drained in every way. When we got home, we didn't say a single word to each other until nearly 9 p.m. Finally, I broke the silence and muttered, "Holy hell, let's never do that again." And she just burst into tears. Man, I probably reached the finish line like 12 times that day. No exaggeration. And she's the type who, once she gets going, just does not stop, so she definitely hit double digits herself. Turns out, that kind of marathon isn't great for your hormones once you hit. Story 17. Wife went through, let's say, a discovery phase when she was still the girlfriend. She was somewhat sheltered in a highly religious household. She discovered some light fantasies from talking with her friends, and we explored some stuff together. One night she initiated by rubbing her foot in my tang under the table at dinner. Things escalated. Then I realized she wanted to try some foot stuff out to see if it worked for me. It wasn't my thing at all, but she kind of got into it, and we were laughing the whole time. She had gotten a pedicure for it and put in some thoughts and prep, so I entertained her through a couple of positions. Then we got into some more serious stuff, and out of nowhere, she stuck her whole F on my face and was trying to get it in my mouth. I noped out of that one so fast. She was confused until I told her we could reverse roles and see how she felt. She suddenly realized that it wasn't her thing at all. We took that off the list and never revisited it. Story 18. I was with a guy who smacked the crap out of my jugs. They were black and blue for weeks afterwards. I did enjoy it at the time, but I don't feel like experiencing it again. Story 19. Last week around 11 a.m., my girlfriend and I were walking the dogs when I noticed someone crouching in the distance on a hiking trail. We thought they might have fallen or needed help, so we headed over to check it out and maybe offer help. Then my girlfriend pointed out that the person didn't seem to be wearing pants, and I started to worry it might be a homeless person having some kind of episode. But as we got closer, I noticed a second pair of legs. It turned out it was a woman. On the guy's face. At 11 a.m., in a public area about 60 meters from nearby houses and just 20 meters from a busy street, barely hidden by some trees and bushes, I spotted them from about 50 meters away. I called out to ask if they were okay. They stopped, and she got off him. They might have found it hot and exiting, but for us it was highly inappropriate. There are so many better spots to do these things without giving the whole neighborhood a chance of running into you. Story 20. I was soloing off while I was high as balls. I was fully convinced that my tater tots were twisting around each other, and so now, I have a video on my phone of me zooming into them to make sure they aren't. And no, you cannot see the video. Story 21. Public banging. We got caught once, and honestly, it was a real downer. I still feel terrible about it. It was this sweet old man who stumbled upon us. He just looked so disappointed and shook his head in kind of a sinking depression. After that, I no longer find it thrilling to expose randos to my banging performance non-consensually. Story 22. One day, my best friend called me to pick him up from the police station. I figured his car had been stolen or something, so I drove 2 towns over to get him. There was no jail time or bail, just him and a girl waiting outside the station. I gave them a ride back home. When I asked what happened, he said he didn't want to talk about it and told me not to mention that I'd picked him up to anyone. So, I just turned up the radio and kept quiet. And I didn't think about it no more for nearly a decade. Until I changed jobs recently, and my new boss told me about this crazy thing that happened years ago that they still joke in the office about to this day. They used to have a street-level office with windows overlooking a parking lot. One day a couple showed up and started pounding like crazy right next to the windows. These windows are just big glass panels, but they're made to look like sheets of metal from the outside. The girl was so loud that people from all over the building came to take a look. Until eventually someone called the cops, and they picked the couple up. I could tell straight away from the description of them. My best friend is the parking lot banger. I'm not sure if I should tell either of them that I know the other. Story 23. My girlfriend gave me a blowy while having a really strong mint in her mouth. On paper it sounds amazing, but my lil guy was in excruciating pain. Story 24. Shower bang bent over made me so dizzy I felt like I was going to pass out. Unless you have a huge shower with plenty of room, it's just not worth it. Now that we live together, we've tried shower banging while standing, but it's just as bad. Trying to find the right angle while both standing, avoiding slipping, and dealing with water as a poor lubricant makes it way too uncomfortable and distracting to actually enjoy. Story 25. Back in 2002, I was an eager 18-year-old freshman when Monica, a 24-year-old grad student, zeroed in on me. We met at a welcome mixer for our department, and somehow, I caught her eye. She was the first woman who actually flirted with me, and by the end of the night, I was completely hooked, line, sinker, and all. It was an incredible week, and the banging session was absolutely out of this world. She was my first, and I was in pure heaven. We shamelessly showed our affection all over campus, earning plenty of disapproving looks, but your boy didn't care. I was totally smitten, a complete fool for her. Then, exactly 1 week later, Monica disappeared. No calls, no messages, nothing. Monica was schizophrenic, and what happened was one of her episodes. She had stopped taking her medication again. I only learned about her condition when I was called before a disciplinary committee and had to prove that I had no knowledge of her diagnosis and wasn't taking advantage of someone unable to consent. Thankfully, I avoided expulsion and criminal charges, and now here I am, sharing my story. Since then, I never did anything even remotely intimate without getting clear, verbal consent first. The downside: some potential girlfriends laughed at me, called me paranoid, and even blamed me for ruining romantic moments. Story 26. Back in college, I had a casual friend with benefit thing with this guy. One time I was over at his place, and he'd just made himself a grilled cheese sandwich. No big deal, right? Well, he forgot to mention he'd added Tabasco sauce to it. When he used his finger, just one finger, I audibly yelped out loud. It took us a minute to figure out why I was suddenly on fire. Funny enough, he's now married to my best friend, and sometimes when I see him put Tabasco on his food, I can't help but wonder if she's ever had the same surprise. Story 27. 30 and drugs. When I was much younger and married to my first wife, we didn't have kids yet and partied pretty hard. At one party, We met a very attractive girl who was friends with one of my wife's coworkers. We spent hours hanging out and talking, did quite a bit of drugs that night, and she ended up coming home with us. At first, it felt strange. I was super amped up but quickly learned about coke dong. Basically, it can make you insanely charged mentally, but messes with the actual hardware downstairs. It's pretty common, but I had no idea. So there I was, watching them go at it while a whirlwind of thoughts ran through my head. Am I dying? Why won't my dong work? Am I gay? Did I do too much drugs? Should I call 911? Or just try to bang anyway? Turns out being really high, a little drunk, and paranoid about not getting a stiffy downstairs can make you way too aggressive while trying to get started. I kept feeling pain but didn't really register why, so I just ignored it. The other girl was into it at first, but my wife seemed turned off by the intensity. When I saw her face, I felt guilty and tried to slow things down. Then the girl grabbed my berry sack and slapped me, so I did the same to her, way too hard. She fell off the bed and stared at me like I was Mike Tyson. My wife grabbed her, and there we were, all bare, standing in this dimly lit room, when the girls suddenly started laughing maniacally. They jumped back into it, gave each other the big O while I stood in the corner, both confused and terrified by everything that had just happened. On top of that, I was starting to lose track of time and memory, like when you've smoked way too much. It was a really strange feeling. She left, gave me a hug, and said something like, "I'm not mad, don't be upset." The next morning, I woke up to my wife looking at me and saying, "We're never doing that again." I agreed, but I wasn't sure why she said it, until I noticed scratches all over her, bruises on her leg, and bite marks on her lip. I felt sore everywhere and looked down to see scratches and welts across my stomach and chest. I was completely confused. My wife told me the girl was completely crazy. She'd brought a paddle and some other stuffs. She used both on my wife and then tried to use them on me, but I fought back, and that's when I ended up punching her. Afterward, she apparently threatened to call the cops on me unless my wife did it with her, so my wife took one for the team. A few days later, the girl called asking if we wanted to party, and we just looked at each other like, hell no. We never saw her again after that. Story 28. Doing it in the back porch with no protection was the worst for me. It felt like I had diarrhea, but it was just the baby gravy coming out of my back door. Never again. Story 29. Banging in the woods at night. Easily the worst experience of my life. It was during a bush party, and we drunkenly wandered off into the trees. We ended up doing it on the ground, totally unaware of our surroundings. The next morning, I woke up with blisters the size of eggs on my knees and forearms. Turns out we rolled around in poison oak. It got so bad I had to go to the hospital. Never again. Story 30. My ex liked to ruin the endings by squeezing or slapping my beans. There was no warning of this prior. The normal ruins were fine, but I felt like that went over the line. Thankfully, my current girlfriend loves to make sure I end fully, and I thank her every time for it. Story 31. Doing it in a partner's grandparent's house. I used to date a guy whose grandpa was a bit out of it and had a habit of wandering the house at night. One time after we finished in the guest room, lights still on, clothes nowhere in sight, his grandpa straight up opened the door and caught my ex standing there completely bare. I had to literally jump out the window to avoid running into him in the hallway. Never again. Grandparents' houses are cursed. Story 32. My partner and I bought metal handcuffs and got freaky in the truck. He handcuffed my hands to the back seat handle, but my right thumb went completely numb. I told him, so we stopped, and he unlocked me. We kept going after that. A month later, my thumb still isn't back to normal. It's not totally numb anymore, but the sensation is definitely off and uncomfortable. I really regret not doing more research beforehand, because those cuffs are known for causing radial nerve injuries. Apparently, permanent damage is pretty common. Story 33. Any kind of polyamorous situations, never again. I was good friends with a bisexual woman who was in an open marriage, and every now and then she'd give me blowies, which was nice. Then they got a girlfriend, and when I visited, the two women would put on little shows for the husband and me. That was also nice, but yeah, that's where I'm done. Eventually, the throuple broke up because the wife was being too open about the marriage. The two women moved in with a different guy, but I still visited and enjoyed the occasional blowies from the original woman. One day, it was just me and the two girls hanging out. They started fooling around on the couch, and I got really excited. I began doing it with the girlfriend, and the original woman seemed into it, telling me to go ahead and bang her. So, I did, bent over the couch, and gave her a pretty disappointing performance. But hey, it was still nice. The next day, the girlfriend calls me. Turns out the original woman is furious that she slept with me. So they break up, and then the new guy and the original woman start stirring up drama in my life. No more polyamory or groupthink for me. Too many toes to step on. Literally. Story 34. Back in the early 2000s, I was in Nashville for work and got to my hotel way too early. My room wasn't ready yet. So, I went to relax by the outdoor pool and noticed this older, insanely muscular woman pounding beers and doing shots alone at like 1 p.m. She offered me a beer and a shot, and we started chatting. Turns out she was a WWE wrestler. We ended up banging for hours, but she was so dominant, yelling and rough that honestly, I was a little terrified. Later, I learned she was married to another wrestler, going through some stuff, and they eventually divorced. She shared wild stories from the wrestling circuit that blew my mind. Needless to say, I'd never, ever hook up with an alpha female like that again. Story 35. This might sound simple, but damn, I learned the hard way. If a girl is about to give me a job, tell them immediately what to do or not to do. The amount of times I felt like I was about to get my strangled dong ripped off, or have dry hands with calluses, rub against my sensitive skin, or feel like it was about to get murdered from a strangling of robotic, catastrophic strength is astonishing to me. Maybe I just assumed women would naturally know, or were naturally gentle, or would understand that some kind of lubricant is needed when working it there from their own experiences. But my God, I've had multiple experiences where it just killed the mood right there because of the pain they just jolted through me. Story 36. Hardcore scratching while doing it, never again. In the moment, it felt amazing, but it didn't take long after getting dressed and moving around to realize I'd basically turned my skin into Velcro. The scratches were deep, painful, and took forever to heal. Human nails aren't exactly clean either. Definitely not something you want dragging bacteria into open wounds. It meant weeks of polysporin, painful scabbing, scabs catching on clothes, burning, and just general regret. Definitely not worth going through again for any reason. Story 37. My ex-boyfriend convinced me to have a 3 score with a stranger, and it turned out to be the worst blackmail of my life which followed after, which ended up with my parents and police knowing about the entire thing and the stranger getting off pretty easily. It left a bad taste. Story 38. There was this big underpass in the middle of a busy area. On one side, a main road, and on the other, a massive Walmart shopping center. The only proper way across was a bridge over the wash, but I felt like exploring, so I decided to hike down instead. For some reason, I felt this weird urge to crawl into the overgrown trees and bushes, and we'll start going at it. No corn, I wasn't even really turned on. It was just this random impulse that hit me out of nowhere. Nothing actually happened, no one saw me or caught me, but it hit me shortly after just how badly that could have gone. If someone had seen me, I could have been charged as an offender, and that realization scared the hell out of me. I get that some people get excited by the risk, but for me, that fear killed any kind of thrill. I still don't know why I felt drawn to do it in the first place, but I know for sure I'll never do anything like that again. Like sure, banging while camping deep in the woods with no one around for miles? That sounds fun. But doing it near an underpass with people on all sides, including probably other people like me just trying to explore? Yeah, screw that. Story 39. My autistic cousin. So my cousin has been into rodeo since he was a kid and is actually a really talented steer roper. One night, he wins a roping competition and then heads to the dance that always follows the rodeo. Keeping this pretty vague to protect both myself and my cousin, he gets drunk and ends up hooking up with an absolute smoke show of a woman. Afterward, we all head back to the place my cousin and I share. My girlfriend and I were making out in our bedroom when suddenly I hear it. Hit me, hit me. The walls in this old house are pretty thin. Hit me. Then the damnedest screeching scream you ever heard rang out. Followed by, I'm gonna end you, son of a bitch. I jump out of bed and open the door to see my cousin Beret, sprinting down the hallway, chased by a smoking hot, bare girlfriend sporting the beginnings of a huge black eye. She looks furious, like she'd take down anyone who tried to hurt my cousin. I finally realized what had happened and ended up on the floor laughing my butt off. 2 days later, at the county courthouse, they got married. She had the biggest crap-eating grin on her face, black eye and all. Fast forward 24 years and 3 kids later, they're still together. My cousin's words, I ain't ever gonna hit her again. True story. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.